What happens before calm starts feeling like clarity? It begins very quietly, not with a decision, not with a clear conclusion, not with the feeling that something has finally been understood. It begins when the pressure starts to fade. The body loosens. The thought becomes less sharp. The question no longer feels as if it is standing directly in front of you. And in that softer space, something subtle happens. The mind begins to trust the calm. Not fully at first, just enough. Enough to think, maybe I'm seeing this better now. Maybe this is the clear version. Maybe the fact that I feel calmer means I have finally understood. But before calm becomes clarity, there is a small inner shift. The mind stops checking what is actually true and starts checking how peaceful the thought feels. That is the moment to see. Because the thought may not have changed, the situation may not have opened, the deeper layer may not have revealed itself yet. Only the pressure around it has become softer. And when pressure softens, the mind can begin to mistake a quieter state for a truer perception. At first, the calm does not present itself as an answer. It presents itself as relief. The system feels less crowded. The inner noise becomes thinner. The thought that was pushing now feels farther away. And because it feels farther away, the mind begins to believe it can see it better. Sometimes that is true, but sometimes distance only makes the discomfort less immediate. It does not mean the perception became complete. This is the delicate point. The mind feels the space and starts treating the space as understanding. It says, I can finally look at this without reacting. But often, it is not really looking yet. It is resting inside the absence of pressure. That rest feels clean. It feels mature. It feels like the beginning of wisdom. And slowly, almost without noticing, the mind begins to place more trust in the feeling of calm than in the act of actually seeing. This is how calm starts becoming clarity. Not all at once. First, it becomes convincing.
The shift is subtle because nothing feels forced. There is no panic, no sharp urgency, no obvious attempt to escape. There is only a calmer atmosphere. And inside that atmosphere, the mind begins to soften its standards. Before, it wanted an answer. Now it wants to preserve the quiet. Before, it was asking, what is true here? Now, without saying it directly, it begins asking, what allows this calm to continue? That is where the movement changes. The mind no longer follows the question all the way down. It follows the version of the question that does not disturb the new state. So anything that fits the calm starts to feel more believable. Anything that threatens the calm starts to feel excessive, unnecessary, or too complicated. This is how clarity gets replaced without looking like replacement. The mind does not say, I am avoiding something. It says, I am being balanced. It says, I am not overthinking anymore. It says, this feels peaceful, so it must be closer to the truth. And in that moment, calm begins to shape what the mind is willing to see.
This is the moment where the inner direction changes. The mind is no longer trying to enter the uncomfortable part. It is trying to stay near the calmer one. And because the calmer part feels less threatening, it starts to feel more intelligent, more objective, more trustworthy. But what is really happening is much simpler. The system has found a state it prefers. And once it finds a state it prefers, it begins to protect it. Not aggressively, not loudly, almost gently. It avoids the thought that would make the calm unstable. It skips the question that would make the answer less clean. It moves away from the detail that might bring pressure back. And all of this can happen while the person feels completely reasonable. That is why this moment is so hard to recognize, because the mind does not feel like it is hiding. It feels like it is finally being peaceful. But sometimes what feels like peace is only the first place where the system stopped feeling threatened. And the first place where threat decreases is not always the place where clarity has arrived. What happens next is even more subtle. The calmer version starts becoming the preferred version, not because it explains more, because it disturbs less. The mind begins to lean toward the thought that lets the body stay open. It leans toward the answer that does not tighten the chest again. It leans toward the meaning that does not bring back the pressure it just escaped. And because this leaning feels gentle, it does not look like control. It looks like clarity. But underneath, the system is still choosing. It is choosing what keeps the calm intact. This is the small movement that often goes unseen. The mind does not reject the uncomfortable part directly. It simply gives less weight to it. It says, that is probably not important. That is probably overthinking. That is probably just old fear. And sometimes it is. But sometimes it is the part that has not yet been seen clearly. The part that still needs attention. The part that calm has made easier to ignore. This is where calm begins to become selective. Not false, selective. And selective seeing can feel very peaceful, while still leaving something unfinished underneath. This is why the moment before calm becomes clarity is not dramatic. It feels almost reasonable. The mind simply begins to prefer what does not disturb it. It does not say, I want to avoid the truth. It says, I do not need to go there. It says, that would only complicate things. It says, I already feel calm enough. And because the body is no longer tense, those sentences feel more believable. They feel adult. They feel grounded. They feel like the end of unnecessary struggle. But sometimes they are only the beginning of a softer avoidance. The system has found a peaceful place, and now it wants to stay there. So anything that would reopen the question starts to feel like a threat to that peace. Not because it is wrong, because it asks the mind to keep looking after relief has already arrived. That is the exact point where clarity can be replaced, not by fear, by the desire not to lose calm. This is where observation becomes important, not analysis, observation. Because if you analyze too quickly, the mind can turn even this into another explanation. But if you observe, you can begin to feel the exact moment where calm becomes convincing. You can notice how the body relaxes and how the mind immediately wants to trust the thought that keeps that relaxation alive. You can notice how the uncomfortable detail does not disappear. It simply loses volume. You can notice how the question is still there, but now it feels less urgent, less threatening, less necessary to follow all the way. That is the moment. The mind is not yet lying. It is not yet fully avoiding. It is simply beginning to prefer the version of reality that lets the calm remain. And if you see that early enough, the pattern weakens, because calm can still be felt without being allowed to decide what is true. Once this is seen, calm changes its place. It is no longer the proof that you are seeing clearly. It becomes a space where seeing can happen. That difference matters, because now, when the pressure fades, you do not have to rush to believe the first peaceful thought. You can let the body soften without letting the mind close the question too soon. You can feel relief without turning relief into truth. And slowly, the pattern becomes visible at the exact point where it usually disappears, the moment calm arrives. The moment the mind wants to trust it. The moment peace starts feeling like evidence. That is where clarity begins. Not by rejecting calm, but by seeing that calm is not the same as clear. It may help you look, but it does not look for you. This is inner cognition.